without further ado, let's go right ahead and go into this second segment where I talk about some of the top shooting guards in the NBA right now. This isn't all time because, I feel like a lot of people already know who the best shooting guards in the world are and, the best shooting guards to ever play are, so I don't really feel like talking about them. Let's talk about the game and how it is now. So, obviously, number one, you could really flip-flop between the first three players on my list because I have no problem if you were to put either one of them on top of the other. And Anthony Edwards, in my opinion, he is the best shooting guard on this list. If this was, a couple of years ago, the best shooting guard in the NBA, without a doubt, was James Harden. And there was, everyone else was secondary. Nobody in the entire league was better than James Harden. And there was no other shooting guard in the entire league that could even measure up to James Harden and his talent, right? So now that James Harden is no longer the same player that he was, this number one shooting guard debate is it's open for the public, for lack of a better term. Any of the top three players that I said, that I'm going to say, you can put them in number one and I wouldn't be upset. But if this was, a year where James Harden was doing his scoring prowess, then you would be absolutely ridiculous if you were to put James Harden any lower than any other guard. And Anthony Edwards arguably was one of the better options for Team USA in these Olympic Games. Through his NBA career, he only averaged less than 20 points in his rookie season, and even then he was averaging 19.3 points per game in his rookie year. But in this previous season, he averaged 25 points per game when 46% shooting, as well as 35% shooting from three. Also ended the year averaging 5 rebounds and 5 assists as well. And he also had a very decent, I say decent playoff because he fell off a little bit towards the end of the playoffs, but through a majority of his, of the playoff year that he was playing in last year, he played phenomenally. He made it all the way up to the conference finals, and the only reason why he didn't make it all the way was because of Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. He ended up beating the Denver Nuggets in 7 games, something that we didn't expect the Timberwolves to do at all, and more so off of a comeback after, the Denver Nuggets had a lead early in Game 7. And he also averaged 27 points and 7 rebounds and 6 assists in the playoffs, along with shooting 48% from the field, 40% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. So, again, if you have any of these other 3 shooting guards ahead of him, then I'm not going to be opposed to that, because the next shooting guard on this list is Devin Booker. He would have been number 1 on this list if it hadn't been for Anthony Edwards and his play in the Olympics. Last season, you could make the argument that Devin Booker isn't even supposed to be a shooting guard, that he's a point guard, but this is my list, and I can do whatever I want with the list. And in my opinion, Devin Booker has always been a shooting guard throughout his career, and this is, the first season where he's actually, been a point guard. But despite that, I would still have him as one of the best shooting guards. He's just a shooting guard that's playing point guard, given the role that his team, based on how his team is constructed, right? Now, it's not the same as what James Harden did. James Harden was a shooting guard and turned into a point guard. Devin Booker is just playing the point guard. And in this year of playing point guard, it's arguably been his best year, period. He averaged the most points he's ever averaged in his career, 27.1, averaged 49% from the field, and he takes a lot of mid-ranges, so that should be noted. He shoots 55% from inside the arc, and again, he takes one of the most difficult mid-ranges that you might see in today's NBA. He also shoots 36% from 3, and on top of the 27 points, he was also able to average almost 7 assists as well. And again, the only real reason why he wasn't the best shooting guard was because of the fact that Anthony Edwards was playing really well in the Olympics. But even, aside from that, Devin Booker played phenomenally in the Olympics as well. He was arguably, the United States' unsung hero in the entire Olympics. Like, he was playing phenomenal. And not only that, him in the postseason is also something to marvel at. I mean, throughout his entire career in the postseason, he's averaged 28 points per game. And last season, he averaged 27 points per game, even though, he got swept. Getting swept by Anthony Edwards, I mean, it's not that bad considering, how good the team was. And even then, in 2023, when he got bounced early in the second round, I believe it was, he was averaging 33 points per game and shot 61% from inside the arc, 58% from the field, 50% from three, and was also averaging 7 assists along with that. So 33 points on 58% shooting, and 50% shooting from three, as well as 7 assists. Like, that is just ridiculous numbers coming in from a shooting guard. And really, the only knock on his career is the fact that he ended up losing in the finals. But unlike Anthony Edwards and the rest of the shooting guards that are on this list, he made the finals. And, a lot of the other shooting guards on this list, they can't really say that they make the finals while also producing, crazy numbers like what he was producing. Again, not all of them. Some of them, they have made the finals, but not all of them on this list. Now, this final shooting guard in the top 3, again, you could order them, the top 3, in any which way. But Donovan Mitchell, I think, is by far, clear-cut a top 3 shooting guard in this league. He's one of the best playoff performers in this modern NBA, and one of the best playoff performers that I've seen in recent memory. It seems like every single year he makes the postseason, he always, does way more. He goes above and beyond the expectations that he has in the postseason. There's rarely been a time where he goes to the postseason and he averages less points than what he already produces. He's been an all-star since 2020 and made the all-star team last year as well. He averaged 26 points per game on, 46% shooting, as well as 36% shooting from three. He's also one of the very few players in NBA history to score 70 points. That's one thing that I didn't mention about Devin Booker. Devin Booker has a 70-point game. He also had a 60-point game last year, but ended up losing. And, one of the very few players in NBA history to have 70-point games, both of those guys. And again, Donovan Mitchell, he's just a ridiculous playoff performer. In this last year's playoffs, he averaged 29 points per game and shot 47% from the field as well as 35% from three. Throughout almost every single postseason, he's been a ridiculous playoff performer. And the only real, bugaboo about his career, ironically, is in the playoffs. Like, he doesn't, despite, being a playoff performer, his teams haven't really had that much success in the postseason. The farthest that Donovan Mitchell has gone in the postseason was no farther than the second round. And, that's different than Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker, who have each made it past the second round and have each played like fewer years than Donovan Mitchell has in this league. Just a little bit. Devin Booker has more years than the both of them, but he's made the finals, which is something that Donovan Mitchell hasn't yet. And because of that, that's going to, affect him in the rankings, in my opinion. And, on top of the fact that just wherever he goes, like, he might play well, but his team in the end of the day doesn't really play well. So that's the end of the top 3. Then the next player in this list is a little bit controversial. Kyrie Irving. Again, a lot of people would think that Kyrie would be a top 3, or that he, would be a little bit higher than what you would expect in this group. Oh, and I just realized that there's some people in the chat. I haven't acknowledged that. I apologize. Just give me 1 second. So, Mob is curious what group the Miami Heat are in, and are they in a group of death, or are they in one of the easiest groups in the season tournament? Okay, that's an interesting way to put that. But from my understanding, the Miami Heat, they're in Eastern Group B, and they're paired up with the they're paired up with the Milwaukee Bucks, the Pacers, and there's still one more team, and I have no idea which team that is. There's one more team left in, the Eastern standings, because, they have Miami, they have Milwaukee, and they have Indiana. I have no idea what's the other team that's in the standings for them. Yeah, I have no idea. Well, I'll have to see later on. I only have the games that were revealed. I don't have the groups, but I have no idea whether or not they're in a group of death. I mean, they do have the Pacers and they do have the Bucks, so that's 2 of the 4 positions that are probably going to be occupied. I mean, those teams are really dominant. And he also had another question in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. For Kevin Durant, would I put them in the rankings for shooting guards or for small forwards? He's a small forward. Maybe not even a small forward. He might even end up being in the power forward because, Bradley Beal, I don't know what I'm putting Bradley Beal at, even though I don't even think he's going to make the list, but he would probably be in a small forward or a power forward category. P.S. He plays both positions at a high level. Yes, he does, but, that's not his main position. Similar to how, the shooting guard is mainly Devin Booker's position and Anthony Edwards and Donovan Mitchell and this guy, Kyrie Irving. Now, as I mentioned before, this player is a little bit controversial, not just being in the rankings, but being a shooting guard in general. But I had Luka Doncic at the point guard on my previous list, so that would make Kyrie Irving the shooting guard. And the way I see it, every single year that since he's been on the Brooklyn Nets, he's been a shooting guard. He even told James Harden that he was a shooting guard on his team. So not only that, but when you look at his position in Basketball Reference, it has him listed as shooting guard, even though you can make the argument that he should be a point guard or however you want to put him at. It really doesn't matter. Now, Kyrie Irving, again, he's also controversial because of the opinions that he has outside of, what he says in front of the media, right? He has these, these perceptions and these thoughts and these things that he wants to say, but they're against the media and things like that, and it just paints him in a very dark light, I guess you could say. There are a lot of things that he said that was rather questionable. And one thing that isn't questionable about him, though, is how good he is on a basketball court. He averaged 25 points per game last season, was able to shoot 41% from 3, as well as almost 50% from the field, 25, 5, and 5 on almost 50, 40, 90 shooting from the entire field. He was just that guy this last season. Made it to the finals, didn't really play well in the finals, but overall in the postseason, he wasn't that bad, even though, I've seen him play much better when he was paired up with LeBron. He's also the first player on this list that actually has a championship ring on his resume, and again, the only reason why he isn't really ranked that much higher is because of his performance in the finals. But aside from that, he does have arguably the best resume outside of everybody on this list. The only player that's really, getting a resume that's stacking up towards his is the next player on this list, Jaylen Brown. And I wouldn't be saying this if he didn't win a championship the last season. He averaged 23 points per game this last season, shot almost 50% from the field, 35% from 3, and was also able to tally 3 assists along with 5 rebounds as well. Again, the biggest reason why he's on this list is because of his postseason performance. The Celtics, they only lost 2 games in the entire 3 games actually, in the entire postseason, and every single one of the games that they played, it was basically a blowout in the postseason. And the only reason why Jaylen Brown is on this list is because he was able to win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP as well as the Finals MVP in the postseason. He was by far the best player in every single postseason series that he played in this postseason. Now, he would be a lot lower on this list if he didn't win the championship last year, but, can't really change history, and because of that, he is going to be top 5 on this list, and, I really wouldn't, a lot of people, they might question why I would put Jaylen Brown under Kyrie Irving, or, why I would put Kyrie Irving over Jaylen Brown. Like, it's going to start up a lot of controversy. But I really think that, despite the fact that Jaylen Brown might have outplayed Kyrie Irving in the postseason, he also had a lot more help from his teammates as opposed to Kyrie Irving, whose only help was Luka Doncic. And aside from Luka, there was really nothing that the Mavericks had going for them. So that's sort of the reason why I have Jaylen Brown underneath Kyrie and why Kyrie is ranked up there so high. Next on this list, we're going into below the top 10, so players that just aren't in these top 10 rankings, and, well, actually players below the top 5. So they're getting a little bit, unknown, I guess you could say. There aren't really that many popular shooting guards, I guess you could say. Well, not as popular as there were NBA point guards. So, next player on this list is Desmond Bane. Again, there weren't that many good shooting guards in the league last season, or not as many shooting guards that can stack up as the other few guys that I mentioned. So, the distance between 5 and 6 is way greater than the distance between 1 and 2, maybe even 1 and 3, heck, arguably even 1 and 4. The distances between 5 and 6 are crazy. And I mean, I can't really defend Desmond Bane even being on this list, other than the fact that he produced good enough numbers to be considered on this list. I mean, he didn't make the postseason last year, but he was able to average 23 points per game on 46% shooting from the field, as well as 38% shooting from 3, and was also able to tally 5 assists as well, along with 1 steal and an effective field goal of 55%. Again, not really much that can be said about Desmond Bane because, there aren't that many talented shooting guards in this league to be considered at that. Now, I know you might think DeRozan is a shooting guard, but no, he's actually more of a small forward or power forward now with how he was playing on the Chicago Bulls. So I don't even think I can put him in this list. And speaking of DeMar, his teammate Zach LaVine is definitely making this list, even though he barely really played at all last season. I understand he didn't play at all last season, but when he's healthy, everyone knows just how much of a competent scorer he is. I mean, his last great season his last good season was only 2 years ago, where he averaged 24 points per game and was selected for the All-Star team. And even then, in 2021, he averaged 27 points per game and was also selected for the All-Star team. He just didn't play nearly enough games in this season, but I don't really think that would be fair in docking him a few points on this ranking, because, let's face it, the next shooting guards on this list, you can definitely agree with me that Zach LaVine is better than every single one of the shooting guards that are left on this list. You'll see them all. But again, last season he only played 25 games, but he averaged 19 points, shot 45% from the field, and was also able to shoot 34% from 3. Again, not very interesting, but he's a lot better than the rest of the guards on this list. Actually, wait, no. Derek White is 8th on this list. I should have that pointed out. He's definitely 8 on this list. It wasn't that previous guy before. But given the fact that Derek White won the Olympics, and given the fact that, he was a very important piece to the Boston Celtics and their success, I had to put him on this list. Throughout his, tenure with not his tenure, but throughout the championship run that he had with the Boston Celtics, he averaged 16 points per game, shot 40% from 3 and 45% from the field, as well as shooting 92% from the free throw line. Arguably the most efficient player for the Celtics in the entire postseason. Definitely their most valuable player as well. Well, one of the most valuable players that they have. And he ended the season, averaging 15 points per game, as well as almost shooting 40% from 3 and shooting 46% from the field. Again, the rest of the shooting guards on this list, like this one right here, Devin Vassell, I just can't really put him better than Derek White. Devin Vassell, sure, you can make the argument that his numbers were just a little bit better. 19 points per game, 47% shooting from the field, and 37% shooting from 3. Big reason why he's not higher than Derek White is because of his postseason play. I would much rather see Derek White in the postseason. I would much rather have Derek White, as a shooting guard in the postseason as opposed to having somebody like Devin Vassell. But that's just me. And again, there's one more spot left on this list. I can't really save it for just one person. I mean, I think that, Tyler Herro should be in this number 10 spot, but I really don't know if Tyler Herro is even worth being on this list. He averaged 20 points per game last season, shot 40% from the field, and 39% from three, which are great stats and definitely warrant him to be part of the shooting guard list, but I cannot take myself seriously if I put Tyler Herro on this list. I can't, but let me know in the comments what you guys think. But aside from that, that's my list of the top shooting guards going into the NBA. So now I will go ahead and move on to the third section of this podcast, which is going to be talking about how I would feel as a fan going into the NBA season and going into this season. It's just my opinions on how I would feel as a fan. The teams that I'm going to be going over are the Celtics, the Knicks, the 76ers, and the Brooklyn Nets, as well as the Toronto Raptors. So basically all the teams in the Atlantic Division. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about, my opinions on them and where they're going to be at this season right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.